Hello! We will be presenting a short story analysis of Lamb to the Slaughther. Let's dive into what the author purpose in writing this story.
Now, let's briefly look at the author of this short story, Lamb to the Slaughter, which is Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl, known as one of the greatest storytellers in 20th century, and he was born in Wales in 1916 to the Norwegian parents. Did you know he worked in the Royal Air Force during the World War II before becoming a writer? So, his works often have ironic tone, dark, and Lamb to the Slaughter is no exception.
So for brief breakdown, this story is darkly comedic tale of betrayal and crime. It follows Mary Maloney, a devoted housewife whose life takes a shocking turn when her husband, Patrick, unexpectedly announced when he is leaving her. This story is explore theme of betrayal, deception, and unexpected strange of a seemingly meek character.
Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the plot and the Freytag's triangle. The plot of the story begins with Mary Maloney, who is a very devoted and pregnant housewife that is happily waiting for her husband to return from work. Her husband, Patrick, is a detective, announces that he is leaving her, and that makes Mary shocked. In a moment of rage and despair, Mary grabs a frozen leg of a lamb and kills Patrick by striking him in the back of his head. After realizing what she have done, Mary devises a clever plan to cover up her crime. She puts the lamb in the oven and goes to the grocery store to establish an alibi, and returning home, pretending to discover Patrick's body. When the police arrive to investigate, Mary plays the grieving widow, even offering the cooked lamb to the detectives. Ironically, the officers eat the murder weapon, unknowingly destroying the evidence that they needed. The story ends with Mary quietly giggling in the other room, knowing that her plan has worked perfectly. For the breakdown of the Freytag's triangle analysis, for the exposition is the story that sets up about Mary Maloney's routine life. She is portrayed as a loving and devoted wife waiting for her husband to come home. For the rising action, it is when Patrick returns home and behaves unusually cold and distant. He revealed that he is leaving her, which makes Mary feel very devastated. For the climax of the story, in a sudden, impulsive act, Mary kills Patrick with a frozen leg of a lamb. As the following action, Mary regains composure and executes her plan to cover up the murder. She goes to the grocery store to create an alibi and interacts with the police calmly when they arrive. The resolution is when the police unknowingly eat the leg of a lamb and destroying the evidence of the murder and leaving the suspicion quiet. And after that, Mary laughs happily, knowing that she have successfully fooled the police.
So for the next one is conflicts. Conflicts are the central of the story as they drive the action and reactions to the characters. Now, I'm going to walk you through the internal and external conflicts in this short story. Now, let's start by looking at the internal conflict in this short story. Based on this dialogue, Mary Maloney, who is the protagonist in this short story, faces an internal conflict right after her husband, Patrick, announced that he wants to leave her. Mary was shocked, confused, and overwhelmed with her emotions. She struggled between wanting to save her marriage or being unable to control her reaction to his coolness. Besides, this confusion can lead to her violent actions later on. For the second internal conflict that I found in this short story, based on this dialogue, as Mary tries to cover up the murder, she faces a deep internal struggle between her guilt and the need to protect herself. Then, her thought shift from remorse to self-preservation, to showing that how these internal conflicts make her questioning herself about her choices and her feelings. Then, it's a battle between her emotions too and her survival instincts. Now, let's move on to the next conflict, which is external conflicts for this short story. External conflict in this short story is between Mary Melanie and the law. As you guys can read this dialogue below. After Mary killed her husband, he has to deal with police investigation. Then the police do not suspect her at all, so she take this opportunity, or we call like this situation as her own advantage, because she can hide the evidence and manipulating the situation or manipulating the detective. Now, let's take a look for the second external conflict in this short story. This external conflict can be viewed as character versus society, as Mary is going against through the societal norms and the system and the justice system. For the second external conflict, comes when the police who investigate this crime unknowingly consume the weapon that Mary used to kill her husband, which is Mary's leg of lamb. So this shows how irony the conflict it is, and shows how smart the Mary Melanie in complicit her crime without no one realizing it, that she's the one who killed her husband.
Now, we will talk about the setting based on the story. For this slide, we have setting of time and setting of place. The setting of time in this story is in the evening. It is shown in the text. The room was warm, the curtain drawn, and the two table lamps alight, which describe a cozy atmosphere with the darkness outside. The evening setting creates a calm yet suspenseful mood, preparing the readers for the shocking event that follow. Next, let's look at the setting of place. One of the key locations in this story is grocery store. In the line, "Hello, Mrs. Melanie, how are you?" we see how Mary cleverly put cheerful and calm to create an alibi after committing the crime. This setting is crucial as it highlights her cunning and manipulative nature, showing how far she is willing to go to escape suspicion.
Next is the theme of the story. So, there are two themes that I found from the story. Let's go with the first one. The first one is betrayal and revenge. The evidence is where Patrick's announcement of his decision to leave Mary, implied to be due to another woman or a desire for separation, have somehow triggers Mary's emotional reaction. So the text evidence is where Patrick says, "This is going to be a big shock to you, I'm afraid. But I have thought about it a good deal and I have decided that the only thing to do is to tell you right away. I hope you won't blame me too much." As a consequence, Mary's act of revenge is immediate and intense as she kills Patrick with a leg of lamb. So the text evidence that we can find where we can know that Mary really kills Patrick is that where she said, "Alright, so he's tired of me, but he's never going to leave me," right before she kills Patrick. The second theme of the story is subversion of justice. The evidence is where Mary manipulates the detectives by playing the role of a grieving widow and cleverly gets rid of the weapon by having them eat it. So the text evidence is where Mary said to the detective, "It will be a favor to me if you will eat it up. Then you can go on with your work again afterwards." The irony here is heightened when one of the detectives says, "Personally, I think it's right here under our noses."
Next, I shall talk about the point of view of the story. As for the point of view of the story, it is told from a third-person limited perspective. The narrator provides insight into Mary Maloney's thoughts and emotions, which helps the audience understand her transformation from a submissive wife into a cunning murderer. This point of view builds suspense as readers see the events unfold through Mary's perspective, but remain unaware of the police's thoughts. Since the narration aligns closely with Mary's thoughts, readers initially see her as a loving, devoted wife who is deeply attached to her husband. This makes Patrick's sudden announcement that he is leaving her feel like a betrayal, allowing the audience to sympathize with her emotional turmoil even after she commits the murder.
So, moving on to character and characteristic. There's three main characters in this short story. First, we have Patrick Maloney, known as Mary's cold and distant husband, whose actions are selfish and inconsiderate. Okay, so based on the story, Patrick is emotionally distant from Mary, which is evident in the way of he delivered the shocking news of leaving her. Instead of care or apathy, he coldly stared. This is going to be a bit of a shock to you, I'm afraid. But I have thought it in a good deal and I have decided the only thing to do is tell you right away. This line shows how detached he is from her feeling as he speaks in a blunt and clinical manner. So moving on to trait number 2, which self-centered. The trait self-centered nature is clear in how he prioritizes his own comfort and future over Mary's well-being. For instance, he says, "Of course, I'll give you money and you are looked after, but there's need really be any fuss. I hope not so. It wouldn't be very good for my job." This statement shows that he is more concerned about avoiding trouble for himself than about how Mary, who is pregnant, will cope with his decision. In summary, Patrick Maloney's emotional detachment and selfishness play a significant in the story, ultimately leading to the dramatic events that follow. So moving on to next character, which Mary Maloney, known as Patrick Maloney wife. She is protagonist of Lamb to the Slaughther. She started as a devoted and loving wife, but transformed into cunning and resourceful wife after her husband's betrayal. Mary's devotion is evident at the beginning of the story, where she eagerly anticipates her husband's return, and tends to his needs. For instance, the text says now and again she would glaze up at the clock, but without anxiety, merely to please herself with the thought that each minute gone by made it nearer the time he would come. This shows her genuine love and attentiveness towards her husband. For number 2, resourceful. After the shocking betrayal and the crime she committed, her resourcefulness become apparent. She quickly formulated a plan to cover her tracks as seen in this line. She carried the meat into a kitchen, placed it in a pan, turned the oven on high, shoved it inside. This act demonstrates her ability to think on her feet and manipulate the situation to avoid suspicion. In summary, Mary Molany developed drastically in the story, highlighting her complexity as both devoted wife and a cunning, resourceful individual. Next, for the next character is Jack Noyne. He's known as a detective in Lamb to the Slaughter. While they are hardworking and kind, they are easily fooled by Mary's charm and fail to see her as the murderer. Let's go for number 1, professional. Jack is portrayed as a professional detective who follows standard procedure during investigation. This is evident in this line. They were looking for the weapon. The murderer may have taken it with him, but on the other hand, he may throw it away or hidden it somewhere on the premises. This shows his diligent and logical in searching for evidence. For number 2 is knife. Despite his experience, he is quite naive as he failed to suspect Mary and even destroy the evidence unknowingly. For example, he says, "Why don't you eat up that lamb that's in oven? It will be cooked just right by now." This moment highlights his culpability as he unwittingly consumed the murder weapon, ensuring Mary's crime remained undiscovered. In summary, Jack is a blend of professionalism and naivety.
Now, me and Patricia will talk about tone and style. I will talk about tone and Patricia will cover the style. The first tone in the story is a darkly humorous. The story finds humor in a dark way. Mary's darkly humorous reaction is evident when she calmly acknowledged, "Alright," she told herself, "so I've killed him," showing her unshaken attitude toward the murder. The contrast between the gravity of the act and her composed reaction creates unsettling yet ironic humor, making the tone darkly humorous. This tone is often used to highlight the absurdity of serious situation, making readers both amused and uneasy at the same time. Okay, so next we have suspenseful. The tension builds as Mary plans her alibi and interacts with the police. The suspense reaches its peak during her interaction with them when she calmly serves them the cooked leg of lamb, saying, "Oh, it's a nice juicy one," while they are unknowingly eat the very murder weapon they are searching for, completely obvious to the truth right in front of them. So that's all for me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Then we have style. The style of this story is simple and direct because the language is straightforward with a sharp dialogue and vivid description that keep the narrative engaging and easy to follow. That's all from me. I will pass this to the next presenter.
So next, I'm going to talk about literary devices. So writers use this to convey meanings and to connect with the readers. So next, I'm going to talk about imagery. So what is imagery? Imagery is when the authors want readers to create vivid image to make the story more engaging. Patrick collapses after Mary strikes him with the frozen leg of lamb. This actually describes the moment of Patrick's death. The image of him swaying briefly, falling emphasizes physical and emotional impact of the blow. We could say his low realization or his inability to react. We, as a reader, when we read this part, we could actually imagine of what actually happened in this story to create more dramatic tension. So now I'm going to talk about irony. The first one is situational irony. This happens when something is happening opposite with what reader expected. As a reader, we would never expect it of Mary kill her husband using a frozen leg of lamb. In fact, the weapon that is being used have been served by the murderer to make the weapon disappear. The second one is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the readers know something that the character doesn't. So as we read this story, we know that Mary killed her husband, but those detectives believe that she is innocent. So it creates tension to the detective because they couldn't find the real weapon that is being used by the murderer. So next is foreshadowing. This is what the author used to give clues or hints to the readers. So the first one is Patrick's unusual behavior. So when Patrick went back home, he acts cold and distant. It shows that something might to happen. So in this story, it mentioned Mary watched him as began to sip the yellow dark drink. He didn't answer, so she bent her head and went on with her swing. The second one is the frozen leg of lamb. As it mentioned in the story, she lifted it up and looked at it. It was wrapped in paper, so she took off the paper and looked at it again. The frozen leg of lamb. So she thinks that she might use the frozen leg of lamb as a weapon to murder in this story.